Today I'm going to be ranking every song on Experimental Rap by JPEGMAFIA. JPEGMAFIA has been an underground favorite ever since he released the album Veteran back in 2018. And while personally I've never been as head over heels in love with this guy's music as a lot of people are, I have overall respected and enjoyed most of what he's done thus far, despite what my diss track might lead you to believe.
JPEGMAFIA overrated. JPEGMAFIA overrated. JPEGMAFIA overrated.
In my opinion, though, he hit a career high point with his last album, I Lay Down My Life For You, which basically found him mixing his usual sample-heavy hip-hop sound with elements of rock music, and that actually went over surprisingly well. And now, coming into this album, he sort of keeps those influences going a little bit. There are some songs here that sound a bit like something that could have come off his last album, but he also has started experimenting more with sounds of industrial dubstep music, which is an odd choice, and the results vary, but we'll get into that. At number 20 is going to be First Amendment. This song finds Peggy dropping some tasteless Charlie Kirk bars to an awful industrial dubstep beat. These more industrial and dubstep tinged songs are pretty much the worst songs on the album, and this is the worst of them all. I also just came off this one feeling what a way to end the album, because with the exception of a brief instrumental track after this, this is the end. So this is the note that he chose to close this album on, and my God, what a way to go out, I guess. At number 19 is going to be Head. This is basically just a noisy song fragment with some very bland sexual lyrics. At number 18 is going to be Money. This is another one with a giant industrial dubstep beat, but in my opinion, he doesn't really do all that much with that sound here. At number 17 is going to be Degenerate's Prayer. This is yet another bland industrial dubstep track, not much to say about it. At number 16 is going to be Meet the Dealers. This is yet another boring industrial dubstep track. And even though I'm ranking it a little bit higher, it's frankly kind of a toss-up with the last couple. I could rank these three in any order, basically. At number 15 is going to be GYBB, and I think this one basically proves that Peggy has been spending a little too much time with Kanye West. He basically starts the song with this spoken word bit that is really weird, where he's talking about you ghetto people, I'm different than you, I chase money, I'm better or whatever. And then he drops this, don't come to me with no goofy ghetto shit, I'm racist. Which is a very weird thing to say in this context. Then he follows that up with basically one of the most low effort songs on the album. Definitely not a highlight for me, and just super weird and cringe. At number 14 is going to be Chat. And I think what stands out most about this one is how ridiculously boring the flow is. JPEGMAFIA has one flow throughout the entire course of this album, basically. And this is one of the, most obnoxious examples of that. At number 13 is going to be Mask On. This one's got some giant drums, a lot of distortion, and lyrics that are pretty much the same as all the other lyrics here. At number 12 is going to be Tsar Bomb. This one is very similar to Mask On, but it has a slightly more energetic vocal performance towards the end, so I guess I'll rank it one spot higher. At number 11 is going to be New Era. This one's got a pretty easygoing beat and some acoustic guitar parts that I like, but, overall it doesn't really stand out that much. At number 10 is going to be Since I Met Ye. This one lyrically has a lot of nods to addressing the controversy about him associating with Kanye post-Nazi freakout era. And this fan reaction to him associating with Kanye is something that has clearly bothered him a little. He's addressed it in interviews in some frankly very delusional ways. At one point he said that if Kanye wasn't black, then people wouldn't have an issue with a lot of his his comments and stuff, and fans rightly pointed out the fact that, like, bro, if Kanye was white, it would have been way worse than when he's like putting on KKK hoods and saying that Hitler is his hero and all this bullshit. So yeah, clearly the guy has some delusional views about Kanye, who is clearly a hero to him, but, you know, it's not the end of the world. And frankly, this song could have been a lot worse. It does have a pretty solid rock beat that sounds like something that could have landed on the last album. Overall, it's listenable. At number 9 is going to be Baby Girl. This is a pretty decent opener with a solid beat and this hype vocal sample looping throughout the track. At number 8 is going to be Bridges on Fire. The beat on this one goes really hard, and I think it's got a pretty solid melodic section from Buzzy Lee, who is an artist I'm not too familiar with. The lyrics, however, are pretty tedious. I saw a comment online of somebody saying, like, Peggy, you've been fucking my bitch for the last 14 years. Can we find something else to talk about? And I really was, like, replaying that comment in my head listening to the song, because that is, like, the entire lyrical material of this track. At number 7 is going to be Yen. This one pretty tastefully mixes some very lush instrumentation with some heavier, more industrial sounds, and I think the mixture goes over pretty well. And I think the same can be said for number 6, which is No Strippers in Heaven. This one has some really pretty strings in the beginning of the song that then eventually give way to definitely one of the best and most listenable dubstep-inspired passages on the album. This one also seems to be a point where a lot of the various religious themes throughout the album come to a head, although I will fully admit I'm not entirely sure what they all mean. I don't really understand the angle of what he was going for with all of these, like, church hymn passages and references to God and heaven and whatnot. But, I mean, I guess maybe there's just something there that I'm not seeing. At number 5 is going to be Lights. This one is basically a trap remix of All of the Lights by Kanye West, which is a concept that I was initially really resistant towards and didn't like. But there is something just undeniably really ear-catching about the production on this one, and on multiple listens, it's turned out to actually be a surprising highlight in the track list for me. At number 4 is going to be The Ghost of Emmett Till. This one is a rap rock banger that reminds me of everything that I loved about his previous album. This one is actually really solid. At number 3 is going to be War Over Land. I absolutely love the lush chamber pop adjacent production on the first half of the song, and then in the second half it transitions into this really grand section with these choir vocals and this guitar solo shredding in the background. The whole thing is, like, really epic and kind of beautiful. Definitely a highlight on the album. Number 2 is going to be Pop That Heat, and this one is very much in a similar vein to War Over Land. The production on this one is built on this foundation of these pianos that are sampled from A Little Bit of Love by Brenda Russell. And on top of that foundation, he adds more choir vocals and a great guitar solo that just make this an irresistible listen for me. But at number 1, my favorite song on this album is going to be Burning Hammer, which is just a multi-phased sensory overload of a song. The first half of the song is basically this chaotic cycle of these high-energy, tension-building drums that then give way to these, like, acoustic guitar oases in the middle, and then also feature these, like, really satisfying trap beat drops. And then in the second half, we get more of, like, a rock-inspired sound that also kicks ass. Because the song is just constantly changing from one thing to another and never really staying in one place, it really just makes it an edge-of-your-seat ride from start to finish that I couldn't help but really enjoy. I will say the lyrics don't really do all that much for me, but neither do the lyrics on any other song here. I mean, who's really listening to JPEGMAFIA for the lyrics? That's never been the biggest appeal of his sound, and so that doesn't really bother me all that much. So yeah, that's what I have to say about this album. I definitely have very mixed feelings about it because there are some genuine highlights like I was just talking about, but there are also the industrial dubstep tracks which are just not good. And then there's also a number of songs that just sort of felt like JPEG Mafia on cruise control. It's definitely nowhere close to as good as his last album. If you disagree with my list, make sure to tell me in the comments. And with that said, thank you for watching.